Right. Hi folks, I'm Colin Northmore. I'm the principal of the Evolve Online School. Evolve Online is a fairly new school. We started last year in January, and we're part of the Advatec group. So Advatec is the largest provider of education in Africa, and they have schools and universities all over the country and in other parts of Africa. And we are Advatec's homeschool curriculum. So Advatec decided to get involved in the homeschooling community, and they asked us to start Evolve Online, which would provide a curriculum for homeschoolers. We go from grade 0 to grade 11 at the moment, with our first grade 12s coming through next year, and I want to focus on the grade 10 to 12 group for the purposes of this talk, but obviously have lots to say about the other grades. When we were asked to start Evolve Online, we were given an opportunity to look at education and to say, can we try and resolve some of the problems with education? Is there a way for us to look at traditional education and turn it on its head and really be disruptive in this space, while at the same time still ensuring that the children that we were responsible for were able to get to an exit point that allowed them to access university, that allowed them to get into the careers of their choice. To do that, we looked around the world at what different schooling systems existed, and one of the things that really struck a chord with us was a system being used at MIT in the aeronautical engineering faculty. They call it the 5 facets of understanding, or crosslinks. And so we adopted that system to be our method of keeping track of children's learning and making sure they were achieving what they needed to achieve to be successful. Crosslinks works like this. It starts with a very simple question. What should a child know or be able to do in any subject at any level? So can I answer a question about what it is a child should be doing or learning to do, depending on their age and their ability? And with that question in mind, you create what's called a curriculum map. So we've got our curriculum maps for all our subjects that start at grade 0, run all the way through grade 12, and tell us what to measure at every level that a child is progressing. Now, it's also important when you create a system like that, that you answer, it immediately gets you to answer the question, how will I know that a child knows or is able to do that? And how will I measure whether a child is doing that? I'm going to come back to that in a moment. The other thing that it allows you to do with the curriculum map is you're able to say, in order to learn this thing, you first must learn that thing. Because one of the real problems with the traditional education is it just relentlessly goes through the curriculum. Whether or not the child is grasping everything, because of their age, as long as they get a certain percentage at the end of a year, they are just shifted through into the next grade and the next grade, and slowly the gaps accumulate. And so, and this is particularly true for a subject like science or maths, where children they think they're not able to do it. It's not that they're not able to do it, it's that they've accumulated particular gaps in their learning, and no one is remediating those gaps. No one's going back, no one's identifying those gaps and saying, what is it this child should know, be able to do, or what do they need to know before I ask them to do this? And so we can map back and we can say, if we're trying to teach equations, we need to have taught fractions, or we need to have taught how to simplify between brackets. I'm not a maths teacher, so I'm really pushing myself to give a maths example. I mean, a better example, because I'm an English teacher, is to say, if I want to teach metaphor to a level 8 child, I need to have taught them figurative and literal language at level 5. I need to have taught them comparison at level 1, where they're doing big, small, tall, short, whatever it is. So that's a great question to ask, and then the next thing is to make sure that a child gets ample opportunity to practice and demonstrate that they've learned to know or do that thing. And so in our system, we expect failure. We want failure. We want a child to get it wrong. We measure how many times a child redoes something. And we're expecting children to try something, not get it right, There's a whole process they need to go through to analyze why they didn't get it right, what they could do differently, and more importantly, who else could they ask for help. And then having gone through that metacognitive process, they need to be able to try again and see whether the insights they've had are actually changing the picture, are changing the outcome. So we measure that as well. We measure what performance we're getting, but we also measure how many attempts it takes to arrive at a mastery level. When you get to grade 10, 11, and 12, the question has to change. No responsible school will not change the question to what should a child know or be able to do in order to succeed in the matric exam. Because ultimately, our country uses the matric exam as a measure or a gatekeeping mechanism to decide which children to admit to which courses at tertiary level, to decide what children can study. And until that changes, a school in South Africa needs to be responsible and make sure that it's preparing its children effectively to succeed in that space. What we can't lose sight of, if we also want to be responsible, is teaching children to think about thinking, teaching children to learn about learning. And so we've got to try and find a way to answer both those questions, and we've done that, I think, when it comes to, well, I don't think, I'm pretty sure, otherwise I wouldn't be standing here. But we've tried to answer that question. So when we created our curriculum maps for grade 10, 11, and 12, we changed it slightly. We asked curriculum experts around the country to answer the question, what would it take for a child to get a minimum of 65 and preferably as much as 80% for every one of the subjects that they take? What do they need to know? What do they need to be able to do to get a distinction in the subject or to get a minimum of 65 in this subject? And then we've set out to create the curriculum that provides for that outcome. Now, to make sure that at the same time we're not losing track of the deeper learning and the higher order thinking, we adopt a methodology of learning which comes from a school called Phillips Exeter Academy in Boston. It's called the Harkness Table method. And it's a Socratic method of learning. So what it does is it puts kids around a table with a question to answer, and the kids have to engage in the discussion around that question. Some of you may have heard of the concept of flipped classroom. It's a very popular concept, and it basically talks about how in a school we don't do the teaching about things at school. We just give them the work to learn at home, and then we discuss it when they get to school. And again, with my English teacher background, a simple example would be, I want to discuss Act 1, Scene 3 of Macbeth. So I tell the children to go home and read Act 1, Scene 3 so that they can come into the class the next day and we can discuss it. But any teacher knows that when the kids come back into the class, there's a good chance that half of the children haven't read Act 1, Scene 3. And if I give them questions to try and make sure that I have some way of checking that, they've probably copied those questions from their friends at break or in the morning. Okay. There's no way, and it's not a criticism, it's just the way the structure of traditional schooling works. There's no way for a teacher to be sure that the children coming into their class are properly prepared for the deeper talk, the deeper thinking, the debate, the understanding of what they're doing. That's not true online. Online, I can say, you need to go and watch this video of Act 1, Scene 3. And you need to answer these questions. And the teacher has a dashboard. So before the lesson starts, they can see if the child has opened the video. Have they watched the whole video through? What points did they get for the questions that we asked? And we have a system in our school where we can actually put questions in the middle of videos. So as the child is watching the video will pause and ask a question. And if you don't get the answer right, it'll take you back and make you watch that piece of the video again. And again, we monitor, did children have to go back and watch the question again? Using data to drive children's learning is something most schools are it's very new to South African schools, and it's not something that is commonly practiced in our space. So Evolve was built from the ground up to be a data-driven system. It provides a live reporting platform for the parents and the children. So you can see at any given moment what your child is doing, what work is overdue, what work is waiting to be marked. So we hold the teachers accountable as well. And how are you performing on each of those things in detail, right down to what should a child know be able to do. I'm trying to fit too much into this talk. I wanted to focus on matric. We don't have matrics. So I can't stand here today and say we managed to get an X pass rate or a Y pass rate. Okay. What we do have is a group of children where we have a detailed measure in grade 11 of what they would need to improve on in order to meet that standard we have set. And we have mechanisms in place for children to be able to go back and try again. And we hire fourth-year university students who are studying to become teachers to be the learning coaches. Learning coaches work directly with children to help them come up with plans if they're falling behind, if they're struggling to learn something. Then you've got someone you can talk to help you find the answer to that question. I've completely lost track of time, so I don't know if you've shown me any boards yet. I've got time. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry. So I really don't have much more than that to tell you about the grade 10 to 12 group. And I'll just take the opportunity to say what we also are aware of is that a child can't just sit in front of a screen the whole day and learn off a screen. We talk about screen time, dream time, team time, and help. Green, team, dream, and screen. I've got screen time. And the whole idea is that we want a balance for children between when they're looking at a screen, when they're out learning in their backyard, or skipping with the rope, or playing with the ball, or when they are actually working together with a group of their peers to collaboratively solve a problem. So typically in a junior high situation, you might want a child to learn about the plant cycle, you might want them to learn about currency, you might want them to learn about politics, you might want them to learn about protest art, you might want them to learn about Newton's laws of physics. And in a traditional learning process, you would get them to go to different classes to learn those different things. In a model like ours, we will present children with a problem. You have to colonize Mars. In answering that question, or in solving that problem, you're going to learn all of those other things. Because one of our questions is going to be, well, how are you going to get yourself to Mars? And to answer that question, you have to learn about Newton's laws. You need to learn that every action has an equal and opposite reaction, properties of materials, all sorts of things you have to answer. And obviously, we scaffold that. We provide you with the texts and the videos that you need to watch to learn that. When you get to Mars, you're going to have to feed yourself. So now you're going to have to learn about hydroponics. You're going to have to learn about plant cycles. You're going to have to learn about the nutritional value of different crops. I remember one child had figured out that millies grow very nicely, and he was going to grow millies. Until his father asked him, if I only fed you millies for the rest of the year, would you be happy? And that sparked the question, well, maybe I should vary the diet on Mars a little bit. Okay. We also ask children, what sort of society do you want to create? You've got a chance to create a new society on Mars. And so we need you to look at things like capitalism and socialism, dictatorships, autocracies, a royalty-based society, and try and look at the strengths and weaknesses and come up with a society that works for themselves. And so that's how we try to get children to discover the plant cycle rather than telling them about a plant cycle. Now, when they get into grade 10 and 11, 12, that doesn't change. Our curriculum is problem-based. So we will say, we will put the curriculum into a format, we put the curriculum into a format that says, you have certain problems to solve. And in solving those problems, you're going to learn what you need to learn about the subject to take it into matric. The other thing we do at our grade 10 level is we give the children an additional subject to do. So instead of doing 3 electives, our children do 4 electives. Because very often what happens is a child chooses a subject at the end of grade 9, they're still cognitively developing, and halfway through the grade 10 year, they're going to realize that maybe this isn't the subject for them, or they're not interested in it, or it wasn't what they thought it was going to be. Now, what generally happens in a school situation is that at grade 11, they have to pick up a whole new subject. And when that is the case, it means they've got a lot of catching up to do for grade 10. So by giving children an additional subject to do in grade 10, it means that when they get into grade 11, they can drop one of those subjects. They can say, which 3 subjects am I really passionate about? Which 3 subjects did I really enjoy doing? And just carry on with those 3 subjects. Of course, if they wanted to carry on with the 4th subject, we couldn't stop them. But the point is you need to get the best marks you can in matric. So you don't want to spread yourself too far. At the moment, we offer 14 matric subjects. We've planned for 27. And we haven't neglected the arts. We do offer music, dance, drama. We also offer subjects that are sometimes harder to get because there's a scarcity of teachers. So subjects like engineering, graphics and design, information technology, design itself is a subject we offer. And we can literally offer any subject because we only need 10 children to want to take a subject in order for that subject to be viable for us. And the way we do that as well is we hire experts. So I hire teachers who are usually teaching at day schools to teach that elective subject in the afternoon. All our elective subjects happen in the afternoon. We also have children who are doing a traditional schooling who want to do a subject that their school doesn't offer, signing up to do that subject with us in the afternoon so that it expands the possibility for the school and for that child. And so the whole idea of that is that you shouldn't be restricted. I think our slogan is learn without limits. And we mean that quite seriously. We really measure ourselves by that. So what we try to do is make sure we take away the barriers to learning that get in the way of children succeeding. And so you don't want to be in a situation where if you choose subject A, it means you can't choose subject B. Our children can choose any combination of the subjects that we offer. And they can do it, they can do more if they want to do more. They can take longer if they want to take longer. So that's another important factor is the self-paced nature of our work. And so I had a group of, I think it was about 5 grade 8s last year who just skipped grade 9 and went straight to grade 10 because going to grade 9 would have been a total waste of their time. I also have some children who are in grade 6.5 because they are taking just a little bit, they just need to take a little bit longer. There's nothing that would prevent them from succeeding if they were given more time to succeed. And the same is true for our high school kids. You can take longer if you need to take longer. If you have, the fact that we use a digital platform means that we have access to all kinds of accessibility features as well. We have, a guided reading system. We also use a online laboratory. So we have a lab called a platform called Labster, and it includes simulations of all the kinds of experiments you could expect a child to use. It's used by the likes of Stanford University, and we're the first school in Africa to use it because we also had to answer the question, how do you get practical subjects done when you're an online school? And it's a combination of giving children physical work to do at home, but also, and this is what the Stanford research on this has shown, if a child learns to do it, in a simulated environment with a proper simulation of the machines, when they go into an actual lab, they actually are able to use those machines already because the settings, all the processes you follow, all identical. It's just a simulation of that online. I'm actually going to stop there, and I'm going to offer anybody in the audience who wants to ask a question the opportunity to do that. If you don't want to do that, I'm also happy to hang outside for a few minutes afterwards, and you're welcome to join me directly.